Hello YouTube, I'm back with another video from another earlier part that I did for a scan tool diagnosis on 2001 Olds Bravada. The original complaint was, or statement that I got from a mechanic, was that the number 3 injector was partially clogged and it was causing a slightly higher fuel consumption, particularly on the bank 1 cylinders. This video is also in response to another subscriber who goes by the name of KY Home Garage, and I tried to get some recorded live data of the vehicle actually running. Now this first screen that we see here in this first portion of this video, the car was at idle. I had just drove the car about 15-20 minutes, and after the car was warmed up, I put my scan tool on it and had it idle. And as you can see, the RPMs is like at 612. It's at idle. You have your long-term fuel trim up here at the top. This is for bank 2 sensor 1. And this is bank 1 sensor 1 oxygen sensor. Then you can see your long-term fuel trim for bank 2 and bank 1. And as we scroll down a little bit, you can be able to see the short-term fuel trims. The engine was at closed loop, so it was warmed up. And as we go along, this is while the car was at idle. This is a 4.3 liter V6 on the 2001 Olds Bravada. I believe this Evo Genesis, you should be able to hit a button and it should play, but right now I'm just holding down the right arrow key to show the data and what's showing up. Right now it looks pretty decent from what I'm seeing. The bank 1 oxygen sensor does have a lower base number than the in millivolts than the bank 2 cylinder, well, the bank 2 side of the motor. The bank 1 side is showing a base millivolts at 56, and bank 2 is showing a baseline minimum voltage of 87, I believe that is 87. Okay. And here's a look at the short-term and long-term fuel trims at the bottom. And as you can see, on average, looks like there is a little bit, it's pretty even though. I really can't say this right here is really bad. Taking away fuel right now on bank 2. Long-term. The short-term is pretty, looks like it's pretty decent, but this was at idle, and I don't think I had revved the gas up at all on that, and that's what I'm showing on that. Now the next portion, and this is the downstream oxygen sensor, which at that point, yeah, it was at 1500 RPM, so it was a little bit more air coming in through the converter, through the system. And as you can see, this voltage line up here went up a little bit, which is pretty normal. Oxygen sensors are switching, but like as I said, on bank 2 you have a minimum voltage of 69 millivolts, and on bank 1 is 35. This also kind of gives me the indication that bank 1 is running a little bit more richer than bank 2. And as you can see, the high voltage maximum millivolts for bank 1 is 929, and up here for bank 2 is 946. Okay, we do have switching, but with those lower numbers on bank 1 gives me an indication that his fuel is being added. And as you can see, for the long term down here, it's not a lot. It's still within specs, but it's more than what bank 2 is. and it's at 2.3% more. Okay, now on this portion of the video, as you can see, the RPMs are at about 1300. I was actually driving at this point, so this is like data that I picked up from when the car was actually moving. You can still see that on bank 1 you have a lower minimum amount of millivolts at 17 as opposed to 43 for bank 2. The max is 916 for bank 1 and 937 for bank 2. The long term is kind of steady, and as you can see, for the long term fuel trims, bank 1 is adding 6% more than bank 2. And if we scroll down to the short term, this is also in closed loop. I was actually driving. Bank 2 is at 7.8 and bank 1 is at 5.5. But as we go along, it's still kind of even, but the long term shows that bank 1 on average is adding more fuel than bank 2. And that could be due to a partially clogged injector, which means it's not getting the full amount, which you see with that 6.2 on bank 1, and then in bank 2 you got 7.8. So the long term is making an adjustment to add more fuel based on my understanding of how that is. Now as we go along further, I was actually on an outer drive doing anywhere between 45, 55, and maybe close to 60 miles per hour. And okay, the bank 1 long term is adding more fuel. And one thing that KY Home Garage was mentioning to me was that maybe it's not the injector at all, but it could be a dragging brake shoe or a stuck caliper or a dragging parking brake. And I'm thinking that if it was the case with that, then why would it just be high on one bank and not the other if it's something dragging or slowing the car down as a whole mechanically like that? Okay, look at the long-term fuel trims. Bank 1 is still up higher than bank 2. You're getting more fuel added to bank 1, probably because of a lean condition, and the long term is adding more fuel back to bank 1. That's just what I'm thinking from what I'm seeing from the numbers. And bank 1 is adding more fuel than bank 2 on the short term and even on the long term. You guys switching, like I said, your minimum volts for bank 1 is at 17 millivolts, and for bank 2 is 39. So there's more fuel coming in to bank 1 than it is on bank 2. And once again, this is at, now I'm at 1800 RPMs. I probably was doing about 55, 60 then. And go back up and take a look at that long term bank 1 sensor 2 voltage. Okay, we'll go back down. Okay, taking away fuel from both banks in the short term. As we go along further, the long-term fuel trims always show a slightly more average amount of fuel coming in the long term, and with the short term it either evens out or bank 1 is adding more fuel. And this is with the car at close to about 18, anywhere from 18 to 1700 RPMs. And as you can see the numbers there, The long term is just adding more. And at this point you can see that the short-term fuel trim is almost pretty even, but the long term is still adding fuel. And if you go back, I'm at 1700 RPMs. Okay, so we go a little bit farther. Long-term oxygen sensor is pretty stable. And okay, at that point fuel trims are even, but that bank 1 will go up a point more than that bank 2 on the long term. Let's go back 11. In the short term, bank 2 is taking away fuel, bank 1 is adding fuel. Okay, there we go again. 5.5% for bank 1, 2.3% for bank 2. On the short term, you got 5.5 for bank 1 and 4.7 for bank 2, adding fuel. It's either even or it is slightly higher for bank 1 all the time. And that is the data that I got from actually driving anywhere from 45 to 55, maybe 60 miles an hour. Okay, the engine was warm. It's at closed loop. Engine load was at 19%. And right there, the RPM is at 1800. You see the long-term oxygen sensor for bank 1, sensor 2 in the back behind the converter is pretty stable. Once again, you got slightly lower voltages for bank 1 and a higher minimum voltage for bank 2. The average is 490 on here, 405 up there, 937 for bank 1, 916 is the maximum voltage for bank 1, and 937 for bank 2. Let's see. Bank 1 is just more fuel is being added. So this is with the car at about 1800 RPMs. You see your long terms down there, and then we go down to the short term. Still is adding fuel, but is adding more to bank 1 than it is bank 2. Okay, so KY Home Garage, if you can see this, or anyone who wants to give any comments about this and what they think, I still believe that it's a partially clogged injector on number 3 on bank 1, and I try not to rule out the fact that something could be dragging, like a stuck caliper or something like that, but why would it just be on one bank and not both? So here's the information. Please feel free to leave a comment below, and thank you.